Heidi Sevestre ist Gletscherforscherin und arbeitet für das Arctic Monitoring and Assessment Program des Arktischen Rates. Sie promovierte an der Universität Oslo, wo ihre Forschung dazu beitrug, ein globales Modell der Gletscherströme zu erneuern. Sevestre ist Mitglied im The Explorers Club, im Expertenkomitee von Protect Our Winters Europe und außerdem Fellow der Royal Geographical Society. 2022 wurde sie mit der Shackleton-Medaille für ihren Einsatz zum Schutz der Polarregionen ausgezeichnet. Sie war Teil von zahlreichen Dokumentationen für National Geographic, BBC, ZDF, ITV und France Television. Heidi Sevestre lehrt Glaciologie am Universitätszentrum in Svalbard in Spitzbergen und sie leitet regelmäßig wissenschaftliche Expeditionen in Polar- und Hochgebirgsregionen.
Hi everyone, so it's a bit cold as you can see. Just starting the GPS survey.
Mit ihrer Arbeit möchte sie wissenschaftliche Erkenntnisse zugänglicher machen und zum Handeln im Kampf gegen die Klimakrise motivieren. Neon Green Network präsentiert Heidi Sevestre.
Thank you so very much for the warm welcome. I feel extremely privileged to be here with you tonight. So as you heard, my heart is truly in the ice. This is what I study for a living, and this is what I love the most. I wanted to start this talk with a fact that will blow your mind. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that Homo sapiens sapiens have never known a planet without ice. We have always developed, we have migrated, we have thrived on a planet that had glaciers high up in the mountains and ice in the polar regions. But today we need to be fully aware of the fact that we are losing these glaciers. And I'm aware that we're in Austria. You've all seen glaciers before. You all know how beautiful they are. But are you truly aware that we are about to risk it all today? I've always been fascinated by these glaciers from a very, very young age. I was born in a French house with both of my parents taking me all the time to explore mountains. And when I was 16, I actually met someone who totally changed my life. He was a mountain guide from Switzerland. His name was Hubert. And Hubert told me that, I should think about my life, my career, and that there were people on Earth who are paid to study ice. And I thought, wait, that is the coolest job. I really need to become a glaciologist. And so this is what I do today. I get to be a doctor who has ice as my patient. Glaciers are not very talkative, but our job is to make them talk. We want them to tell us everything. Tell us what's happening to our planet, tell us what's happening to our climate. And the very, very first glacier that I studied was this one. Look at this. Look at this massive piece of ice. This is the Trien Glacier in Switzerland. Back in the days, in 1891, it was just majestic. The glacier was so big at the time that people were actually mining the ice. So this is how we dealt with glaciers before. We used to cut pieces of ice, and these blocks of ice were being sent all across Switzerland, all across France, to help preserve food. We didn't have freezers, we didn't have fridges, but we had glaciers. And when I studied this glacier, contrary to what my students think sometimes, it wasn't in 1891, but it was in 2010. And this is what the glacier looked like back in 2010. What you see here is two pictures taken from exactly the same location, and we see massive differences between the two. There you see that something happened between the two pictures. And these glaciers are the best barometers of climate changes. There's nothing better on Earth telling us that the temperatures are changing, telling us that the precipitations are changing. This is the superpower of our glaciers. They make the invisible visible. We don't see CO2 concentrations increasing in the atmosphere, but we see this. We see a disaster in the making. So my question to you is, but why do we need these glaciers for? And I think there are no better places than Vienna, actually, to explain why we should care and why you should care. We should care for all the reasons you see here. Because these glaciers, along with the snow, are some of the best water towers that we have on Earth. Every summer, we expect to get free water from these glaciers. This is fresh water that we use for drinking, fresh water we use to produce electricity, water we use to irrigate crops, to maintain the discharge of our rivers during the summer months. In my country, we even cool down nuclear power plants with the water from the glaciers. Understand how precious they are. But today, it seems that we're trying our very hardest to make them disappear. Every single day, a bit faster than the day before. Not only these glaciers are disappearing fast, but also, in some regions, the glaciers are simply collapsing. Over the past 2 weeks, I was actually not far from here. I was in the Italian Dolomites, and I spent quite a few days around a glacier that you might have heard about, called the Marmolada Glacier. Last year, in July 2022, it was a Sunday, and there were a lot of people hiking in the mountains. It was a beautiful day. Temperatures were really high. And what happened that day really surprised everyone. This is what happened to the Marmolada Glacier. 64,000 tons of ice and water came crashing down the glacier as it was collapsing. The water fell down the mountain at 300 kilometers per hour, and 11 people died at that very moment. This is something that we couldn't predict. This is something that is very hard to detect in alpine glaciers, but this is the reality of climate change in the Alps. Climate change kills in our mountains. Let's be very clear about this. But what we're also seeing is that not only glaciers are melting, glaciers are collapsing, but it seems that we're giving them an extra nudge these days, even in this country. This is what is currently happening right now as we speak. There are excavators digging into these glaciers. And you know why they're digging into the ice? Because in a couple of weeks, a few skiers are going to get the chance to ski down mountains that do not have much snow at the moment. This is how we're helping the glaciers. This is how we're treating these global commons. This is not only happening in Austria, but actually all over the Alps. And the news about the excavations in Austria reached the highlights of the news in France, actually. You know, everything that's happening here is making headlines all over Europe, and we really need to think long and hard about what we're going to tell all children and the children of our children about how we dealt with our glaciers. Today, if we continue on the current trajectory of emitting more and more CO2 in the atmosphere, we can bid goodbye to all of this. You know, we will absolutely lose the majority of the alpine glaciers in the next few decades. So look at how mesmerizing landscapes like the one that was just shown are. You know, when we see pictures of landscapes with ice, we will never see these mountains as beautiful as they are today. So you're aware of what's happening in the Alps, but now I wanted to zoom out a little bit and take you to a place where I live, which you heard about. It is the Arctic. This is what the Arctic is like. So the Arctic is north, around the North Pole, and this is the planet seen from the Arctic. The Arctic is an ocean that is surrounded by land masses that are covered with a lot of ice. And on the ocean itself, we have a big piece of ice that is called Arctic sea ice. To the big despair of my parents and my family, this is where I live parts of the year. It is a place called Spitsbergen or Svalbard, and it is beautiful. This place is just another planet. I mean, what you're seeing here is actually the northernmost town in the world. It's called Longyearbyen, 2,500 inhabitants, 3,000 polar bears, and it is a place that looks like nowhere else on Earth. Everything there is made of ice. The ground is frozen, we have glaciers everywhere, we have snow most of the year. But the reason why I'm telling you about Svalbard today, about Spitsbergen, is because nowhere else on Earth is warming as quickly as this place. This is what we're observing in Spitsbergen. So their climate change is a reality, it's something that we see every day. We have the ground that is thawing and collapsing. We have sometimes biblical rains in the middle of winter when it's supposed to be -30. And the most dramatic events have been what you see in the lower right corner. Spitsbergen is typically an Arctic desert, so it's supposed to be very cold, it's supposed to be very dry. But with global warming, the temperatures have gained 6 degrees since the 1960s. So the air masses are getting warmer and warmer, and because they're getting warmer and warmer, they can carry more humidity. And so therefore, if we see the picture I was just showing again, what we're seeing there in Spitsbergen is actually avalanches that are coming to crash down on our little town. This was again a Sunday, and it was a Sunday in December. It's already dark for a month. We don't see sunlight for another month and a half. And we had a week of terrible weather, of a lot of snow, a huge blizzard. And people were in their homes, having breakfasts with their family, wearing their pajamas, and from one second to the next, there were thousands of tons of snow that crashed down into a handful of houses. Imagine finding yourself having breakfast and a second later, not knowing where you are anymore. That day, 2 people died in town, one of the teachers of the school and a little baby. And believe me, when you live in such a small place, I think a part of our soul died that day. There are no climate skeptics in Svalbard because there everyone is aware of how bad the climate crisis is. So why is it so bad? Why is the Arctic warming so quickly today? Well, because of this. What you see here on this video, and please do not stop the video, keep showing it. This is the life of Arctic sea ice. So again, it's a crust of ice that is floating over the ocean. What you're seeing here is that during the winter it expands, which is normal. During the summer it recedes, which is also normal. Sea ice has a superpower that we depend on every single day, even here in Vienna. It is simply a big white surface. And because it is white, it reflects solar radiation back into space. It's like wearing a white t-shirt during the summer months. Well, Arctic sea ice is the white t-shirt of the northern hemisphere. If we don't have Arctic sea ice, what we have instead is an ocean that would be much darker, that would absorb solar radiation so much more readily. The older sea ice is, the thicker it is, the whiter it is. But what is currently happening is that Arctic sea ice is dying. Every time we burn coal, oil, and gas, it is directly attacking the old Arctic sea ice. And see the changes that are currently happening before your eyes. The changes are so much faster than we predicted. So it seems that we're trying everything we can to make this sea ice disappear as quickly as possible. The sea ice is receding more and more. We've lost about 45% of the surface of Arctic sea ice in 40 years. And instead, the ocean is simply getting bigger and bigger and getting warmer and warmer. Just a few months ago, a study was published showing us that it is very likely that in the next 7 to 10 years, we might see our first summers without sea ice in the Arctic. So what does that mean for us back here in Vienna? It means that the winds will be disturbed, it means that the ocean currents will be disturbed, it means this: more frequent and more extreme weather events. It's not just sea ice that is important, it is also the ice sheets. We have 2 big ice sheets on Earth. We have Greenland in the north, we have Antarctica in the south. The 2 of them, I'm not sure you're aware of this, the 2 of them contain enough ice to increase sea levels globally by 65 meters. And what you see here on this little time lapse is the places where these ice sheets are currently losing mass, the places in orange and dark red. They are losing more and more ice every year, and what does that mean for us? It means that even here in Vienna, in a landlocked country, we will have to deal with this. With London, that will be underwater partly. This is Bangkok with 2 meters of sea level rise, and this is Europe with 3 meters of sea level rise. It is very likely that we can get more than 1 meter of sea level rise before the end of the century if we continue to sponsor the fossil fuel industry, if we continue to give them so much subsidies, and if we continue to use as much fossil fuels as today. I really wanted to show you this graph tonight. If there was only one slide I had to show you, it was this one. This one is terrifying. What you see on the left-hand side is a series of ecosystems. We can take the first one, the Greenland ice sheet. On the right-hand side, you see a series of temperatures. The little red ball is, to the best of our knowledge, where we think these ecosystems are going to collapse. We have increased global temperatures by 1.2 degrees. We know that if we reach 1.5 degrees globally, Greenland could begin to collapse. And Greenland holds enough ice to increase sea levels by 6 to 7 meters. It doesn't mean that we'll get the 6 to 7 meters instantly, absolutely not. But it means that no matter what we do after crossing 1.5 degrees, will be irreversible. It will be irreversible that Greenland will continue to collapse. So please, find your favorite ecosystem and see the tipping points of these ecosystems as the temperatures we shouldn't cross. You know where we're heading today. We're not heading to below 1.5, we're heading there. We're heading to 2.7 to 3 degrees of temperature increase. But keep in mind that this little red line, it doesn't have to stay there. It cannot stay there. What you're seeing here is basically something that is non-negotiable. We cannot negotiate with the fact that Greenland, beyond 1.5 degrees, will start to collapse. We cannot negotiate with Western Antarctica and asking it to change its tipping points. This is non-negotiable. And therefore, our strategy should absolutely rise up to the challenge that is these tipping points. What we're losing with climate change is not just this. It's not just numbers, it's not just ecosystems, it's also pure natural beauty. It's also what makes us wonder, what makes us dream. You know, when I spend time in an ice cave in the Arctic, I just cannot believe what I'm looking at. We know that nature is the best artist we have here on this planet. And this is also what we lose when we lose these glaciers. Not only we use this pure beauty, but what we lose is also part of our identity. We lose what makes us proud to be Austrian. We use parts of our roots, part of our soul. This is also what is at stake today. So never forget that the future generations will judge us based on the decisions that we make today. Today, something really big happened in my family. My brother and his beautiful wife got a little baby, a little Luca, who was born today. And believe me, I think about Luca now so very hard. You know, we really need to think about how the future generations are going to think back at what happened on the 18th of October 2023. This is our collective responsibility, and the future generations will never forgive us if we make the wrong move. And in order to illustrate this, I wanted to share with you a little poem. So the poem begins like this. It's 3:23 in the morning and I'm awake. Because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do when the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started fading. As the mammals, the reptiles, and the birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protests when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? Thank you very much. Thank you.